Hello. Thanks for being here. We are here to share about what storytelling can help us solve. Some of the stories that can help us resolve and get through, whether it's personal, tragedy, difficulties, work, some of the struggles and challenges we go through, as well as end of life, legacy. So, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want all your experiences to represent in your name? Now, before we go any further, I just want to make sure you can hear me because these things happen. So, I will make sure. And where are you from? If you're from Connecticut, say here. Just let me know that you're here and you can hear me. That would be great help. Let's see. All right. It should be showing. It's not showing. All right. All right. All right. Yes, we are here. We are all here. We're all here at the game. All right. Perfect. Thanks for holding tight. All right. So we have a lot to cover today. And this is our April, and what we were focusing on this month is life, death, challenges, and creating a new dream. And in order to do that, sometimes we need to go back, take a step back, reflect, see how an experience is affecting us, our decisions, our mindset, um, and how we're following through and showing up in life, whether it's personal, professional, and how it's affecting our mind, our body, and our spirit. So today is the last day of April, and I want to take a look at just kind of combining some of the things we spoke about over the month, whether that was audio live or LinkedIn live. And today is kind of pulling it all together about just storytelling and how it can help you transform your life. And let me make sure my chat is hey, Terry. Thanks for being here. Kansas City, awesome, great sound. California. Hey, Veronica. Thank you for being here. So, what we want to do is just first of all remind ourselves how storytelling isn't just a term that people are throwing around these days, but what is it really doing for you and affecting you? And one of the I'm gonna have my notes here, so because there's a lot I wanna cover. And just first of all, the essence of power of storytelling. What that is basically I mean, we all have stories. We all have stories, whether it's every day, the big or the small. Um, sometimes, it's an event in your life that really changes you, and those stories, could be, again, big or small. Um, I'll just use myself an example. Uh, a big story sometimes could be considered when I was abused in an abusive relationship and led out of the country for 7 years, or and then escaped what I went through and learned about the black market and another way of looking at life, and then escaping from that and coming back here. And so, what I would do is sometimes when I'm speaking to groups, uh, depending on where they're coming from, it could be domestic violence, it could be in the business setting, and how did that challenge and the things I learned while I was off on that wild adventure for 7 years. What did that teach me, and how did I come through it? So that's one. in a bigger story. But then sometimes our stories can just be a little snippet in time. An example of that would be my iron butt ride. That's a story that I carry along with me. And again, when I speak to groups or individuals, I'll talk about just the first day of, well, that whole day. It was a very long day. So my iron butt challenge was a 24-hour ride of 1,000 miles. So yes, that was one day. Uh, but again, there's challenges that we incur and go through. It could be a marathon. Same thing. And what is it that, you learned along the way that changed your life or helped you look at things differently? And this is where storytelling can really help us make a huge mental shift. And one of the ways, that we can actually make our way through one of these, major or minor shifts in our mindset is through, narrative, therapy, which they say, 78% of people can gain a new perspective in trauma. Again, I had that was my story through trauma, and different people have different types of trauma. Uh, for one, things look differently for different people and what they've gone through, what's triggered different, things in their lives. So, for one person, their trauma could be, like I said, abuse for me, but for someone else, and it's just as valid, is for someone who maybe um, had their parents at home with them. They grew up in a happy household, and then, mom stayed home, dad worked, and then mom went out and had to leave the household to go work to create additional income. And that could be very traumatic for a child. So for that individual, it's just as effective, on their life, on their, what they go through and how they look and perceive life. So there's different ways that, it can change you. And for people who go through a lot of trauma, or a little bit, it can really create a spurt of growth. So maybe before, something happens, you're a little skittish to go do something different. But after you start to push yourself or you go through something that, you didn't quite plan on going through, afterwards, you're a little bit more braver. And I could just, again, use myself as an example, is when I run into a challenging situation, sometimes what I do is I remember back to something that happened within those 8 years. There's lots of things that I could point to, whether it was, physically, uh, being, hit, or financially not having more than, 20 bucks in my pocket for that whole time, just having no control over anything. Um, and then sometimes when I run into something difficult now, and I can use that as an earmark, and I can say, "Gee, was it as bad as, having someone hold a cigar in your face and threatening to burn your face?" Like, and then I say, "Oh, no, it's not." So just it helps put things in perspective, and I think then I can move forward and take a step. So I hope that's helpful. Um, was that helpful in any way? Hey, Terry. Yeah, so it just helps you put things in perspective. And the beautiful thing about storytelling is it helps you um, put space between something that was difficult that you went through and your emotions. Because if we hold them both together, sometimes they could be that lock on your wheel, and you don't want to move forward because you've had your emotions lock into that experience and that narrative. So storytelling, what you do is you're just taking things apart and you're looking at them more objectively, an experience, um, and what you can do is rewrite how that makes you feel. That is a huge power of storytelling, and it can give you courage to move forward. It can help you um, just take the next, take a baby step forward, whether that is in a personal setting, so you can feel that you could trust other people again. You could trust in relationships again, in work. So sometimes we've had an event, a traumatic event at work. Again, I'll use myself. For me personally, it was well, a couple times, but uh, once when someone tried to push themselves on me. In a partnership I was involved in, and they physically tried to push themselves on me, I could take a step back and say, "Okay." After I was like, "Okay, I chose to not allow that to happen." Yes, I'm a bit traumatized on a lower T, that that happened to me and be angry about how, management wasn't doing anything, whatever. But then I could say, let me take a step back. This event happened, and this was where I wanted to go. So, how do I look back at that story and I said, "Well, where is it where I was trying to go?" So I let go of that experience. So it didn't my emotions didn't hold me there in that experience, but then I could move forward and say, "Well, screw that person. I'm gonna follow through. It may be harder on my own without that, partnership, but you know what? It doesn't matter. That wasn't the original reason what I was trying to do." So I just tweaked things and said, "I'm taking a different road." And, I don't I I don't need to do it with someone else. I'll find someone else. If they wanna partner up, great. If they don't, that's cool too, because I know which direction I'm going in. And, that's the beautiful thing, whether you're in a business relationship or personal relationship, that you appreciate who you are, what it is you, are looking to do, and where you want to go, and stick to it. And wonderful people will still show up. And I could see 2 people right here. I see Terry and I see Veronica, and these are 2 lovely people that I've met online, and we show up for each other, and that's the beauty, um, to not get stuck in life's disappointments, personally, or business, and also, spiritual. So spiritual, places we could get stuck is maybe religion. So, um, we can get very disappointed when behavior of someone or a particular group is not as pure, um, as you hoped it would be. But again, you got to take a step back from the event, the disappointing event, and say, well, is it really, is it true? Is it really true? um, what I was looking at, and do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? And I say no, and I think that's a great thing about taking a step back, is you can say, well, uh, there's a spiritual aspect, and then there's a human aspect. So we many times we need to separate those 2 things, so you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and, pursue, uh, where it is where that you were trying to go, and the pure good space that you were trying to go into. Uh, Now there was something here, let's say narrative. Okay, I did wanna make a mention on, uh narrative therapy. It's a thing, and I think it's, something I never heard about until recently, that I'm not just talking it's not talk therapy, it's a narrative therapy, and that's where you are, um, working on the story that you've lived or uh, the direction you want that to go in. And there are, as you can see here, there are great results. 78% gain a new perspective on trauma and have emotional healing. Again, I didn't realize at the time when I went through what I went through almost 30 years ago that separating myself from getting stuck in a certain emotion, fear, like they say when you're sometimes when we're afraid of something that's happened to us, we have that emotion. It's like a lion's coming at us, and um, everything, mentally, emotionally, physically, has us in this fear mode that we're being attacked by a lion. And the thing about storytelling is you have to actually take a step back and put that in perspective. And so you don't get stuck in that mode. And, 30 years ago, I look back and media is so different now. I look at my little, this is from 30 years ago. Oh, when I was, this is before the whole social media and the internet and everything. Um, that, you know, that's when after the abuse, I came back and then my girls were stolen, um, abducted from here in the States. So, man, that was a double dipper that at that time. Again, the story, I'm able not to stay there because, I could distance myself, and that's changing that story and not attaching to that instance is what can help us move forward. The other thing I wanted to point out here about not getting stuck and how we can grow is just through, again, adversity. So when you're trying to get through something very challenging, um, it can really help you step up, level up. And then you can look back and say, wow, how did I get through that? It was like, let's say, I think even being here with you, when I first started uh, talking and coming on social media, it's probably like a year ago. And that was more through YouTube. I was so afraid to be here and talk with you. Um, and now I look forward to it. So, but that's just because I had to just keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up. And same thing in relationships. Sometimes something is disappointing, but um, there's ways we can kind of move past that, and just keep showing up and get through those difficult moments. That is the way to move forward. I see, again, my friends here, Terry and Veronica, they're very brave people. And I love the people that I meet here on LinkedIn and uh, Facebook and YouTube. Everyone, it has been so supportive, and they all share some of the challenges that they're going through. And this way, you don't feel alone that you are going uh, through challenges. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the internet and showing up for each other. So, yeah, we help each other move ahead. Um, Now, this was something that was interesting. Let me find this with um, career planning. Career planning. Again, when I said back in the day that I was going to move away from shift from a partnership that I was in, that I discovered they didn't have the same intentions that I did. To me, it was just a male female partnership. Um, and then they were a big producer. Um, and I had to walk away from that. Now, at the time, I was single mom with the 2 with 2 girls, and they were probably, I think, like, in middle school. One was in elementary, one was in middle school. That was hard, that was scary. I was working 6 days a week, and, I didn't have any child support. I had no, alimony, I had nothing. So whatever I earned, you know, kill what you eat, that's how it was in the business. And it was scary. It's scary to walk away from something in business. Um, but you know what? You just have to keep your integrity and your values. And if you don't keep that, especially if you have other young people watching you, they're going to learn from you what's okay, what's acceptable. And so I had to pull myself away from um, what it was I wanted at that time and say, I will, to keep my integrity, which has always been central. I think that that's something that we all need to keep our eye on. That's the line in the road is our integrity. Uh, and sometimes we have to step away and let other things fall to the side in order to keep in our integrity. And we have to be creative to do that. It definitely takes creativity to say, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. Maybe I won't do it that way. What can I do in the meantime until I make that shift? And storytelling, telling yourself to change that mindset is really crucial. And this is why the Harvard Business Review talks about this. This is a skill of creativity and drive. And I think sometimes people don't think about those 2 attributes in the same breath, because it's not about being hard driven. I think it's like when I ride my motorcycle. I finally got to ride on Sunday. It was so nice all day, gorgeous out, and or when I would play golf. Um, if we hold on to our golf club or our grips on our motorcycle, you can't hold on too hard. Okay, yes, you need to keep your grip, but if you hold on too hard, you're gonna get blisters on your hands, and you just won't be ready. You won't move your hips right, um, and there is an element of bounce. Is that if that makes sense, all right? Whether you're on the golf course or on your motorcycle, you still have to you keep your stance and you keep your grip, but you still need to keep that element of spring in your step and in your body. So you can kind of move with things when life gives you a bump or suddenly you need to shift a little bit, you still have to keep an element of spring in your step. So, yeah, I changed my story, and I think that is crucial to all of us in order to be able to change direction and not get stuck in emotion. The last part of the storytelling that I wanted to make sure I covered was that stories are not just about facts. Um, and when we look at our legacy, and I think that's something we should look at all the time. Our lives are like books. We have the front cover where we're born, we go through our different chapters in life, and then at the end is where we're wrapping it up. All right. But we never know which one of those chapters is going to be the last one. So you still have to be kind of comprehensive in our chapters, and I think that's what's the beauty of books is when I go through a book, I love to read what's the title of that chapter. And as I go through that chapter, sometimes I flip back at the beginning of the chapter. I'm like, now remember, what was this chapter about? Because there's a lesson there. Uh, and it's fun to remind ourselves as we go on a journey, why are we doing this? So then when we have an overview of our lives, we can say, okay, what I did aligned with things. Um, And whether that's, personal, uh, for our relationships to align with, kinda our values, and what we hold precious to ourselves. Um, that's a guidepost, in work, in career. I have a guidepost, I'm there. So sometimes I would make changes because something no longer aligned with my values. Um, Sometimes we just have to make that shift to make sure we align with our values and what chapter we're in and what it is we're looking to hold space for in our lives. Um, and in our legacy, this is something where the pieces of the chapter add up. Um, and sometimes again, we have to make shifts to represent what it is we want our lives to represent. Um, and I will there's different ways that we can look at our stories and to get through trauma or get through changes in our careers. And when I say the word careers, like I don't have a career. I don't have a career path. I know people do, and that's great for them where they have one career path. God bless them. But I've had to make shifts. And I think that if we're always prepared, that sometimes we're gonna have to make shifts, big or small, um, then we will stay connected to that bounce. So our work and as we go through our professional lives, um, yes, we hold on to making a living with a grip, um, but we still need to keep that bounce in our knees. So then when we need to make a shift and change the direction, then we're able to do that without, um, freezing up. Again, our emotions can make us freeze up. So there's a couple different ways. There's 3 different ways I'd say that we can help make our way through these, challenging situations. Um, the first is to kinda it's almost like writing the pros and cons of different situations. You kinda map it out. So that's a little more linear process. The second way is to look at our story and take our emotions separate from events, and that can help us to reset our kind of direction and keep peace with it. So mentally, physically, we can be at peace with what, why, how we're doing something. And then the third way is more of a creative way where we will it's kind of like an artistic way. So it's like through the arts. It could be meditative. It could be, kind of like art therapy. uh, and it doesn't have to be formal by any means. Um, it could be like through our bodies, meditation, physical, running, just kind of working it through our body so our bodies are not hanging on to trauma. So, those are the 3 ways I find that we can help make our way through trying and traumatic times. And I think at different times, we use all 3 of these things, and depending what's appropriate in your personality, I think, there's different ways for us to control our narrative, and the way to control our narrative is to use one of these 3 ways, or all 3 of these ways at different points in time. So then you control it and it doesn't the you control the story and the event doesn't control you, okay? Um, and another great way is to share your stories. Like I said earlier, I have a couple of lovely people that I've met here. online with me here now today. And you who will maybe replay this later, I thank you for being here. And to share stories with people like you that will show up now or later is a great way to process things as well. Some people say, "Oh, how did you get through what you went through um, for so long?" For 7 years, 3.5 years, one country, 3.5, another country, and then getting back here and having to restart my life. Oh, and the kids got abducted. Like, how did you get through there and not be stuck in that place? And it was basically, I think over the it's almost 30 years, sharing the story with others, um, and doing it in a way that I felt I was helping others. That's what helped me get past, that emotion. And it's funny that they always say it's very true. When you help others, you get more yourself. And looking at my story, my narrative, um, and realizing experiences that happen to us does not define who I am was huge. Um, and sometimes that was, it was all a combination of those three things, like I said. Sometimes I wrote down things, it was writing. Um, I'd say what was good. And storytelling helped me do all that too. This is the story, these were the events, what good came out of it, what things did I learn? Um, what things did I learn not only about myself, but about the world, about people, um, how people can think, how powerful the mind is, how we can justify things, how we can fall into things, how we can be naive about things. Um, so I learned about myself, about other people, about the world, and then also uh, storytelling itself, it being an art form. Oral is different than writing a story. And what aspects did I have to use and work through in order to work on those two crafts? And that also helped me get through and learn and look at things and appreciate things as well. And the third thing, like I said, is another creative way, is what I did over the last 30 years too, is I learned all different types of creative forms of um, doing things, whether that was creating what do you call it? A vision board. I've done that. It could be journaling, physical things, um, like, even my motorcycle riding, that's physical, and that just shakes, they say, shake your hand, clap your hands, shake that negative energy away. Um, Little ways you can do that. I would do that maybe in the car, like if I'm driving to work and I'm feeling anxious, whatever, I'll clap my hands. Like, that helps. Just shaking your body, shaking that, energy that's trying to grip you, any kind of energy of frustration or fear, yeah, so just, like, clap your hands, randomly clap your hands in the car. Sometimes that just breaks that tension, that emotional tension, um, and then sometimes I would go to hot yoga. It all depends, and you can change these things up where you just let things fall out of you, let them pour out of you. It's okay. Let things go through you. Don't fight it. Acknowledge it and create something out of it. Another thing that I love to do occasionally is go to a monastery. So Or let's hope that's not. Sorry, that's my phone, but I hopefully that's not my daughter saying, "I'm having this baby right now." I guess I'm wrapping up here. That would be crazy. Sorry, my daughter's having her, 2nd child. Okay, I have to take it. Sorry. No, she hung up. Sorry. She'll text me, "Mom, I'm having a baby right now. Can you come?" Um, yeah, so sometimes I would go to, and I still do, go to a monastery where I have peace and quiet, and there's some things that I'll go to. You don't have to go to, worship if you don't want to, but what I like to do is I like to go and hear the monks chant in English, and so it's the rhythm. Again, that's a physical, it's a physical and a mental rhythm that makes a shift from what you were doing. So whether it's clapping hands, listening to different, sounds, and it could be sitting by a river. It can break that pattern or bring you into a new wave, into a new one. Um, and that will help you rewrite your story, pull yourself away. So these are all great ways. If you have a certain way that you like to break that pattern when you're caught up in something, share it in the chat what it is that you like to do. Could it be, it could be running, it could be singing. Um, I'll do that too sometimes. Okay. So there's different ways for us to awaken and change our rhythm. And these are ways that we help rewrite our stories and move away from what was holding on to us. So these are different strategies. And when we look at legacy, these are just ways that we want to be remembered, um, for. And I don't mean that just at the end, of our journeys and our wrap up. Um, we want each one of our chapters to be meaningful. And the way to do that is to just be aware that there are events and there are emotions. And it's a good thing to take a step back. And I keep using that term, take a step back, uh, and say, what is it? Um, what is it this event, um, did for me, and what did it not do for me? And that's a big part of storytelling. And that is a huge part of looking at our legacies, because we're putting meaning and, some kind of, um, theme and showing up, uh, to what it is we value and we care about. So, um, I wanted to, if anyone had any questions, just put them in the chat. Let's see. Oh, tapping, yes. Veronica, yes. EFT tapping is a great way. Yes. So tapping, for anyone that doesn't know, there's different ways to do it, but great reminder, Veronica, is you can tap like different meridian. I think they call it meridian points on your body, and you can start, and then you tap on different places on your body, on your chest, and on your forehead. There's all different places that you can tap, and what you're doing as you're tapping is yes, it definitely works, is you are telling yourself a different story. So you can tell yourself a different story. um, you can start the story saying, maybe, um, I'm trying to think of an example. But you could look up EFT tapping, anywhere, and there's different ways to do it. But you're basically uh, changing your story and moving meridian points in your body, so it kind of like shakes things up. And there's that's a great one. Um, and also another way to shift our perspective mentally and physically is tomorrow's May 1st. So May and October, those are the 2 months that I do a cleansing. And so I go through the naturopath, and I get these shakes that are they cleanse your joints, your gut, everything, and that's for 28 days. So there's no fun stuff. There's no alcohol, no coffee, no processed sugar, and so I'll do that for 28 days, twice a year, and that just cleans you out. But it doesn't just physically cleanse you, but mentally, you're challenging yourself, and you're staying on track. So again, sometimes, even when it comes to food, we can try to be tempted to go in a different direction, but we are focused on that line in the road, so that's a healthy way. Yes, and, oh, you release hormones in the EFT, I didn't yes, I believe that, so, yes, those are great ways. Sewing and yoga, someone said as well. I love that example. Those are great examples, yep. Yoga, I said I do hot yoga sometimes, or regular. That's a great way to stretch. And sewing, sewing is one of those things that, like, we forget about. Um, we forget that we used to do so much for ourselves. We used to sew, cook more, um, uh, even needlepoint. Um, I mean, we could do artwork. But I love the idea of sewing because that is a very meditative practice, which is very important. On Sunday morning, they had the Sunday morning on, I think it's CBS. They were talking about being lazy, like how good that is. And I'm like, lazy. I'm like, okay, you don't have to talk about the extreme. No one's saying you're being lazy when you're being um, mindful. They were using the word lazy instead of using the word mindful, and I think, uh, this someone who wrote on here, the beautiful example of sewing is something where it's a practice where you're very mindful. So, we used to, you know, do our raise make our own f raise our own food, we would trap our own, meat. Go fishing. I know when I went to Alaska fishing, I was like, "Okay, I'm not hurting any, uh, this is green. This is I am that this is not being processed. I'm throwing out the reel. I'm catching the salmon. I'm cleaning, I'm doing all the process here." Um, and it's turkey season, right? It's turkey season. So we just got, turkeys, but that was, with a bow and arrow, and I cleaned them and I cooked them, and there's no emissions from that. Like, it's not factory. And sewing, like, that's one of those things where I can't wait to be able to do certain things and sew certain things myself. And I think that's again, these are all creative ways that we would do things for ourselves, and we have gotten away from them, which is sad to say, because then we have more time to waste and do, you know, more of nothing. So, focusing and having meditative, quiet practices are key to having a healthy mind, body, and spirit. And it doesn't have to be formal. So, think about doing things for yourself without having someone else doing it for you. I think that's getting back to the basics. That's the beauty there. And, telling yourself that you can do it and get past it is the way to do it. This week, I was, looking at, uh, contacting the local media because I'm doing a workshop here in Westport, Connecticut at the library, on the 8th in the evening at 6:30 at night about storytelling and legacy planning and writing your story, what you want that to be instead of just leaving it up to your neighbors or your family, for whatever they know or don't know about you. And I was gonna go on Haro. I don't know if you do know Haro. Haro is, it's called Help a Reporter Out, and Peter Shankman, that was his name. He created that. So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go on there and see." And, connect with some local media and just let them know. And I found out that I didn't realize that this guy, Peter Shankman Shankman, yes, Shankman, sold this, probably like 14 years ago to another company. Well, they shut it down. They didn't use it the same way he did, and they closed it. I have to give this guy so much credit because I think he struggles with HDAD, and he was apparently talking to his girlfriend, who I'd love to get that chick on here because I give her a lot of credit. She came up with an idea for him, and he did it, to create another website called, go from Haro to Hero. That's pretty cool, right? It was Haro, help a reporter out, to Hero, which is help every reporter out. So Haro to Hero. I was like, "Oh, dude, that's pretty cool." So now that is the new website that you could go to contact local, media that are, looking for stories. So hopefully that helps you out, that the old one's not there any longer. And, yeah, I give this guy Peter and his girlfriend, um, some real credit because that's how they took a story, something that happened, and say, "How are we gonna turn it into something, into another business, and turn it into something that was good?" Because he sold it with an intention of helping other people, connecting stories with reporters, and it didn't work out so well, and so he created a new one. So I think that's a great thing, how we can not just sit in a pity party, and, take a step back and recreate something new, whether it's in our relationships, um, our jobs, um, whatever path that is, spiritually, business, um, and move ahead. And that's what a legacy is. A legacy is not about creating the 10 commandments for everyone else to listen to you and say, "Hey, I learned it all." I always say the best gift we can give to others or our children is to allow them to learn on their own, but we are there to support them. So that's not the same as telling. That's more listening, and there's more wisdom in listening than telling. I think the wisdom is really about asking the open-ended questions and helping them move and find their way to move forward. And that's also how we look and retell our stories and make that shift. Yeah, and that's how we will retain and convey our values. So thank you for listening to those different ways that we can recreate our stories, and be really creative in doing it. There's just different ways to do it. And remember, there is narrative therapy. Never heard of that. There are people that specialize in it, but maybe you have someone near you that can help you rewrite a story of trauma, a story of um, hardship, For me, I like to speak to groups and I'll do workshops to help carry people through shifting their stories. But if someone has a deeper need, and it's not something we can work with one on one, but really you need a therapist for really deeper issues, chronic issues, then that's what you need to do. But there are specialists that can do that with someone. And just remember that, 3 things I want you to remember here. The first is to make sure you control your narrative, by looking at your story, all right? Don't let someone else control your story, all right? I mean, you can't control what other people what is it they say? You can pick your nose, you can pick your neighbors, but you can't pick your neighbor's nose. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, you can, empower yourself by controlling your own narrative, right? That's you can do that. Also, we talked about just sharing your stories in a community. So take advantage of maybe local storytelling, activities. There's different kinds of journaling groups, writing groups you can be part of, the Westport Library, just actually, I was just on WPKN with Westport Library talking about the event that's coming up, and they were saying, um, yeah, this is the May 8th, and on the radio, they were talking about they're having a monthly storytelling event. So anyone you could sign up to tell a story or just show up once a month at the Westport Library and share, stories. I think it's like a 5-minute limit, but it's a wonderful thing, and I will be there on Wednesday, May 8th, and we are gonna talk about, your stories. And the last thing I wanted to remind you that we spoke about today was just how storytelling can help make shifts in your personal, or professional, or spiritual uh, outlook on things. So take advantage of the different resources around you. Could be a local continuing education class. Um, in your town. It could be through your library, your local writers, group. They're wonderful too. And you can just make shifts from that story. Lastly, what I wanted to do is just let you know if you are around in August that I will be speaking at the National Grief Awareness Day up in Hartford, Connecticut. And welcome to come to that. I'll be speaking, I think I'm not until the afternoon, until 3:30 in the afternoon, and I will be talking about the tapestry of grief and weaving stories of loss and legacy. So I'll be sharing that at 3 o'clock. And then I will be holding a death cafe at 5:30. So if you haven't been to a death cafe, I'll be holding it at 5:30. So it'll be a full, good day. And I'll be, they're going to be not only myself, but other people talking about grief. And it's really interesting that it's not just about death. It's really about the ending of not only a life, but a dream. And when I was a Stephen minister, I used to sit with people once a week and they would just share what they were grieving. And when I would meet with people, they wouldn't share. Grieving wasn't just about losing a loved one, it was about the loss of a job, a loss of identity, a loss of maybe their health has changed, a relationship. They've gone through divorce. Yeah, I know a bit about that one too, a couple times. So I know what it's like to go through all those changes, and it's important to understand that there's grief when there is life, there's changes. So it's important to understand that it's just part of life, and it will help you get through the next chapter. Just take baby steps, and grief is not something that ever goes away, all right? Um, Grief and I just had, Jenna, who was, she owns Papercraft Miracles, who I did a, interview with 2 weeks ago, and she had a beautiful way of saying, she said, "Grief is like a ball, and life is the box, and it's the box that changes shape, not the grief inside." So, I will leave you with that, and hopefully I will see you at either the Westport Library or I will see you at the grief conference. And if you need someone to plug in for your conference or your talk, then hit me up and message me, and we can put something together to meet the needs of your group. So, thank you for being here, and I will see you in 2 weeks, and hopefully, I'll check my phone, my messages, and hopefully my daughter's not delivering the baby right now, so I have to go and take care of that. All right. Peace out. Nice seeing you. Thanks for being